So this was a lot of skill. You didn't realize that. What I was actually doing was I wasn't just lifting. I was actually jacking up. I have a pump in my chair and then going down. That's a skill. That's a skill dance.
How do you find the time for these things?
All right, before I, not much work gets done when you're not around. All right, I have to bring this next guest on. Looking forward to speaking with him. But before we do so, it's always fun when you can find some local Canadian television clips. Let me set this up for you. He was hosting he was doing a free speech themed comedy event. I don't want to get the title wrong. I don't want to misrepresent it. Let's show how it was portrayed in Canadian media before we bring him on.
It was a gig scheduled dubbed the Free Speech Comedy Show. Someone actually jammed up and broke the lock of the comedy club. The owner here canceled the show.
Saying this show is free speech was equated by some people to be this was like a Nazi rally. They literally lumped us in just like regular like Jewish comedians with white supremacists. We have become the same to them.
All right, so here to talk about that, the man who put on the show, you can follow him at Danny Jokes, Danny Polishchuk. How are you, sir?
Hello. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I should also say DannyJokes.com, so you have both websites there. Okay. Lay this out for us. We just saw that clip. You were doing a free speech themed comedy event, and the alt left, as it were, shut it down. Did they officially shut it down? Was it circulated on their mess? What transpired here?
I'll basically from like origin. So Jordan Peterson, who you obviously know, he's been on your show. I watched it. He's excellent. Big fan of his. So he was supposed to give a talk at Ryerson University on August 22nd, titled "The Stifling of Free Speech on University Campuses." It got canceled by protesters because obviously he's controversial. So so I'm reading this and I'm like, a free speech talk got canceled.
Yes.
I'm like, that's like the ultimate in irony. So then the people who canceled it, they made a little Facebook event being like, hey, let's go meet out in the streets or sewers or whatever they meet and let's cancel this show or whatever. So they canceled the show. So the poster that they used, I'm like, you know what, I'm going to use this to make a free speech comedy show because free speech is so important for comedy. So I used their poster, but instead of where it said diversity rally, I removed that and put comedy show. Right. And so,
yeah.
So that was like the kind of troll element of it. I was like poking them a bit because they're calling everybody fascists and they're anti-fascists, but I think they're fascists.
Well, you took away the word diversity, which, let's be honest, that's like their god. That's their Baal. They have diversity and they sit there at an altar and sacrifice white males. You can't remove diversity from the postcard. Now, did you say, are you Jewish?
I am Jewish. I'm a Jewish Nazi.
You are a Jewish Nazi.
They were correct in that assumption.
I am a Gentile Nazi / Jew fag, according to the comments section, so I'm all of the above.
You read your comments. That's crazy.
I know. Why were a woman like, you're a Jew fag? I'm like, well, first off, I'm not Jew. You're clearly Jewish because I think Israel has the right to exist. I was like, do you meet a lot of 6'3" Jews, do you? Like, let's come on. If you're just going to go by...
6.5 right here.
Really? That is one tall Jew. You must have done very well with your...
Quite the outlier.
Yes, the Sun Youth basketball team. We're gonna pick Polishchuk first.
I played in I went to a Jewish Hebrew school, private, when I my whole elementary school, and we would play basketball against really Jewish schools, and the kids would dribble and they would have to hold their yarmulke. I swear to God, and it would fall off and there would be a whistle and they'd have to pick it up, clip it back on.
It pays to take precautions. What's the name of that? Is it traveling while uncovered? What's the technical terminology?
What's the actual? I don't know. It's this, I think, something along that's the physical.
It's a double golden calf. I've offended my lord. So, all right. Now that we've seen this and we can do this and no one gets mad. Here's one thing I will say. So I was raised in Montreal. Funny enough, all the people, I would have Deanne Smith open for me, Mike Mayo. I would perform with all different kinds of comedians. All of them were liberal. But I remember back then, and we've had Mike Ward on the show since, I was super conservative. No one could understand it. Very libertarian, I should say.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't be in a comic green room and not be liberal. Half the time they're smoking up. And even though I never partook, I was never like, you should put that out. But very libertarian. And I always had to explain it to them. I'm going, listen, you don't understand. As a comedian, you cannot be a leftist. And none of them understood it. I was excoriated. I lost friends the more I became open with my my political worldviews in my comedy. I actually had people who I was friends with, who I would perform with in Montreal. They would no longer perform with me. Now, do you consider yourself a classical liberal? And what's been the backlash in the comedy community in Canada? Because a lot of them don't really get the free speech thing.
No. Yes, I do consider myself a classical liberal for sure. And yeah, it's been crazy. Like the amount of comedians who actually like sided with the people who broke the locks of a private establishment to stop a comedy. And the thing is, it was a regular show. There was nothing different about this show other than the name of it.
Right.
Right. It was just but the thing is,
how can they know the content of a live show that hasn't happened yet? They can't.
Unless like Adolf Hitler's on the bill, maybe you might be able to like make a guess.
Even then, he could have been one hell of a comedian. Lots of Jew jokes. Zyklon B is his genre. You know, well, how many Jews does it take to screw in a light bulb? Boo! You haven't answered punching line. Sorry.
Pretty much so. But yeah, no, it's a very like comedy is super left leaning, which is weird because there's less truth on that side. Like there's less more just like kind of, you know, just like not admitting the truth, which is like the whole point of comedy is to talk the truth.
Yeah.
Which is very strange. I actually had a booker of a major Canadian festival message me.
Well, come on. We can get this one of two. We know this now. But yes.
Okay. Anyways, messages me on like it was just like 1 a.m. I've never spoken with her in my life. She's a transgender woman, right? She books a comedy festival. She messaged me. She goes, "Danny, why do you hate transgender people?" Yeah. She goes, "Why do you hate transgendered people?" I'm like, "I don't. Why do you think I hate transgendered people? I've never done or said anything that would indicate as such." Her reasoning was because I tweeted at Joe Rogan. Yeah. So now I'm transphobic. And then I said, she goes, "Joe Rogan's transphobic." I go, "How is Joe Rogan transphobic?" And her answer was an article that he basically, the whole Fallon Fox thing where a transgender fighter with the hands of a man.
A man beating the crap out of women. A man who was a man up until 32 years old, for people who don't know, and has fathered a child, decided, "I'm going to beat up women for a living." So, you know, I wrote an article about this. I got a lot of flack. Again, this was back, sort of the first comic to jump into the pool where I compared the benefits of a male athlete on steroids versus a male not on steroids and the hormonal differences. I said, listen, it's not even close. It's not even in the same ballpark as the advantage as a normal male enjoys over a female. Fallon Fox has been using steroids for 3 decades. They're called balls. And people were furious. This is just, again, like you said, this is medical truth.
Yeah, it's like he has a man, like whatever you want to say about his brain or her brain, sorry, it's like the hands of a man. Like you can't change that. No hormones change your bone density of your hands. It's like you have a man's hands and you punch people in the face for a living.
Right. Okay, so we're getting off topic. We're getting off. So this person said you hate transgender people. I want to get back, and then we can go back on this because being raised in Montreal, this was something that I constantly struggled with. I just remember if I would be in a comedy club and everyone just assumed in Montreal, like, yeah, George Bush is a Nazi, because this is not new. I think people like you have just more so woken up to it, where we were always accused of being Nazis if we were right wing, and I would just say, actually, I don't think he's that bad of a president. I don't think he's a great president. Now, the issues I would have with him are not at all the issues that they perceive they have with him. Actually, I don't think he's as bad as you think. Or actually, you know what? I remember when Stephen Harper was elected at Comedy Works, the open mic night. It was just like you thought a bomb went off.
Oh, I bet.
And which is far more likely on their Islamic comedy night. But this night when Stephen Harper was elected, it was like everyone was just this. And I was like, I voted for him. And I lost friends right away. So let me ask you this. We had this, Mike Ward was on. You remember this now, Jared? He was put before a human rights tribunal for telling a joke. The First Amendment, the right to free speech is enshrined in our Constitution. When I tell people it doesn't exist outside of the United States, they don't understand what I mean. It's not a legally recognized, constitutionally enshrined right in other countries. Not in Canada either. And they've gone out of their way to stress so. Do you find it harder or scarier as a comedian to fall back on an implied right versus an explicit right?
Yeah, I mean, you know what? Like, to be perfectly honest, like I've never really had an issue with like being like censored or like not being able to say. There is definitely the thing where it's like, if you're a comic right now and you say, you know what, I don't mind Donald Trump. If you say that in Toronto, like you are a leper. Yes. Instantly, you are like, if you go on record as that, you're like, get ready to like never work for like, the CBC or anybody in that capacity, because they're so like left leaning. And it's like, there are real repercussions to supporting the president of the United States of America.
Right. But we're
not talking about Gaddafi.
Right. Yes, exactly. By the way, got a Peace Prize. But we are talking about, there is government censorship. You do have Mike Ward put before a human rights tribunal. So kind of my thing is, as a comedian in the States, I know I'll lose work. I know I've lost managers. But I know that I won't lose my seat at at the human rights table, I have the right to speak. In Canada, that's not the case. We've seen that's not the case. Does that scare you as a comedian who, your words are your living?
Absolutely. And the Mike Ward thing is an interesting thing because there's actually a case before Mike Ward, a guy named Guy Earl, who was like a host, because Mike Ward's successful, right? There was this guy, he was a host of an open mic who got dinged for like 15 grand for saying something to like two lesbians who were heckling him. He like, just because he was a crappy comic, and he went off on them and he got dinged. He's like the guy probably made $50 in his life doing comedy. And this guy got dinged for 15 grand. So there is a concern for sure, because like you might say something to the wrong person and then they could take you to the Human Rights Tribunal, which is concerned with comedy at this point, I guess. I don't know.
What's been the fallout with this? There's been obviously a lot of media coverage. What's been yeah, go ahead.
I'd say like a lot of people dislike me because of it, because they think, well, for one, so I had a movie come out about 6 months ago. Do you know Rob Ford?
Yeah. The guy, the crazy guy,
former Toronto mayor. So we have a movie called I made a movie called Filth City, which is loosely inspired by the mayor Rob Ford. His brother went on the news and started blasting us, so that kind of became a bit of a scandal. So I think people in Toronto think like I broke the locks in the venue because I'm just like trying to like incite crazy scandals, which it really wasn't like the farthest from the case.
As a Jewish Nazi would, though, you do have to give them
yeah, for sure, absolutely.
Yeah,
classic Jewish Nazi.
Classic, typical Jewish Nazi behavior.
You want to know something really funny though? My mom, she's like, you need to watch out with this stuff. Classic Jewish mother, right? She's like, you need to watch out with this stuff. I'm like, what? She's like, there actually are Jewish Nazis. I'm like, no, there's not. The moment you fly a swastika in your home or wherever, the Jew thing kind of slides away.
Well, I saw some Nazis outside of Ben's. They had a big bag of bagels. I'm just saying that's how it starts. It is.
First they come for our snacks.
Yes. First they come for our locks, then the chambers. I'm not sure that's how it works, Mom. Just even this would be problematic for leftists. And that's why I said, you don't have to be even right-wing. I am to the right of Attila the Hun to most people, but just believing in this idea of freedom of speech, just like you said, putting it on the name of a comedy show, you're treated like a leper. And I think as someone who considers himself a classical liberal, and for Americans watching, in Canada, that means he'd be pretty liberal in the States. Do you think that this has changed your perception of this open-mindedness of the left? The fact that you're lumped in the same category as me and Ben Shapiro and actual Nazis, do you think some comedians are waking up to how narrow the path is? You have to stay lockstep?
They absolutely, I've had some discussions since this event happened with some comedians who are as far left as you could imagine, to the point of probably they think they could be a communist if that came to be or whatever. Yeah. And they were talking about this being they couldn't really wrap their heads, and you could tell as they were kind of sounding it out, their whole ideology in their head was crumbling. Because if you're a comic, you have to be pro free speech, but then they can't reconcile that with the fact that they're definitely consider themselves more on the sides of the people who stopped the show.
Right.
Politically, right?
Right.
And you could tell it was the red pill where they're like I don't know what to believe anymore. And I heard it from a lot of people.
Well, the problem is again because culturally, I think with society in Canada, they've just absolutely tarred and feathered conservative Christians. But if you just remove that aspect of it that they don't like, because corny conservative Christians don't come to comedy clubs, fine. You compare Stephen Harper and you compare Justin Trudeau, and you compare their stances on the actual freedom of speech, and you compare their stances on individual liberties, and you compare their stances on wanting to jail people or fine effectively politically incorrect dissidents. And it's pretty clear where you need to line up if you're using speech for a living, getting rid of the personality stuff. Instead, they go for the Abercrombie-in-chief, Justin Trudeau. I don't get it.
Abercrombie-in-chief. Yeah, well, Trudeau won because people just didn't want any more Stephen Harper, right? He was just the right guy at the right time. It was 11 years of Stephen Harper, and people were just we're done with this guy.
Yeah, they were we have it too well. We were higher on the economic freedom index than ever. Inflation is at an all-time low. We didn't have the housing bubble. Let's go with the Botox guy. I don't know. All right. Danny, where can people, I know DannyJokes.com, they can see where you're going to be touring and doing shows. Where can people best follow this and stay up to date on it?
They can follow this because we're going to be redoing the show November 10th or 11th. They can follow me at Danny Jokes on Twitter or Instagram. And can I swear on this podcast? I don't know.
Well, you can. We just it gives
it's not a
more.
swear, but I have a podcast. It's called FCK Anomics, but if you say it, then it's swearing. But anyways, they can check out the podcast or DannyJokes.com, Danny Jokes, Twitter and Instagram.
Danny Jokes. Thank you so much, Danny. Polishchuk.
Yeah, killed it.
There you go. Danny, thank you so much. We'll be back. Keep us posted. We want to follow this.
Thank you very much, Fred.
Back after this.
Say what again?